In this video, I'm going to talk about downloading file association graphs. Now, these graphs can appear on two kinds of pages: analysis sets and model sets. Now, for now, they're far more common on analysis sets, so that's what I'm going to take a look at. Now, this website, this version of the IGVF portal is running on a local instance, just running on my local computer here. And so all the data is fake, and all the data is very small compared to how it looks on the production site. So don't trust any of the data you see. It's all just for testing as we develop new features for this site. So let's take a look at an analysis set object, and let's look at this one because it has a file association graph. And another way to get to that panel is to go to this section directory and choose the file association graph. And there you go. Now, there are instances where you may want to include this graph on our presentation or a paper. And so I suppose one obvious way to do this would be to take a screenshot, but then you're limited to the resolution of your screen. The graph might be too large to appear all at once on your screen. So we do have an alternative here that has quite a few advantages, and that's to download the file association graph so you can include it in another application. And to do that, you need this button right here in the upper right corner of the graph. If you hold the mouse over, it says Download Graph as SVG file, and I'll discuss what you can do with SVG files in a moment. For now, let's download it. And you notice you get this Save As dialog that you're probably familiar with. You'll only see this appear in Chromium-based browsers, such as Chrome, of course, or Edge, or Brave, or Arc. But you won't see it in other browsers, for now at least, at the beginning of 2025, such as Safari and Firefox. Those will simply immediately download this file association graph SVG to your browser's download directory. So let's just choose to save it on the desktop and choose this default name where it uses the accession of the analysis that you're looking at, _graph.svg. And there we go. Now, what might be kind of surprising about SVG files is that they're simply markup. Let me copy this file. And then give it a name, an HTML extension. And I'll open it in a text editor. Okay, well, that looks like kind of a mess, but I can reformat it. And it looks a lot like HTML, if you're familiar with that. In fact, it's so much like HTML that if we go to the browser inspector, you'll notice along with the regular HTML with divs and sections and H2s, you'll see an SVG. So it's basically, as far as the browser is concerned, as far as you're concerned, it's just a form of HTML that makes images like this. Also notice it's not that big. It can become quite big for larger graphs or any large graphic. But what can you do with an SVG file? One thing you'll notice is that if you go to the built-in preview app, which can open just about anything, you'll notice we can't open SVG files. So what can we do with this? Well, there are a couple of options. One is to use Adobe Creative Cloud, which does cost a fair amount of money, of course, but it's sort of the standard for handling graphics like this. And there's a free option, probably a number of free options, but I'm going to show one particular common one after showing how to handle these in Adobe Creative Cloud. and that is to open it in Adobe Illustrator. And there's your graph. Now, Illustrator is a vector graphic editor, and SVGs are vector graphics. We saw that with its markup. And so this isn't a raster image. These are actual shapes. And you can move them around, for example, if you wanted to. And a big advantage of vector graphics is that they're not dependent on any resolution. If we zoom way in, you can see it basically has unlimited resolution. So these will look as sharp as the device that you're putting it on can make it. So what can you do from here? Well, you have a couple options. One is you can convert it to a PDF by simply saving it as a PDF. And you can see the PDF here, and you can put it into charts, you can put it into Keynote. Just by dragging it and dropping it. And just like the SVG itself, we can zoom way in, and it still shows complete perfect sharpness, which would not be the case if we pasted in an PNG or a JPEG. But in some cases, you may actually want a PNG or a JPEG. So what can you do about that? Well, there are many paths. What you may want to do is first simply convert this an illustrator.ai file. So let's do that. Now there's not all that much you can do with an AI file, but one thing you can do is open it in Photoshop. And from here, you can save it as a PNG, a JPEG, anything. But you'll notice it is definitely resolution limited. It's not those sharp lines when you zoom way in. They start to get very jagged, visibly anti-aliased. But in some cases, that may be what you need or want. But what if you don't have Adobe Creative Cloud and you want to use this SVG file in some other software? Well, there is a free open source, I believe, application called Inkscape. Now, this is very weird. It's not a Mac user interface. It, I believe, looks pretty much the same on Windows or Mac or Linux, and it's a very Linux-looking application. I don't find the user interface particularly good, but if all you're doing is converting a file, I think it works fine. And maybe you like this user interface. So we'll click Open, go to our desktop folder, and there's the SVG. Let's open it. And now here's a very weird thing that's not obvious at all. If you choose Export from the File menu, it appears nothing happened, but what it actually did was it selected a tab on the right side, which lets you export the file. And so from here, if you go to the bottom right, you can choose a file format, including JPEG, PDF. I'll save it as a PNG. And let's make the resolution a bit higher. Make it 1024 by 1024. And click Export. And there it is. We'll open it in Preview. Notice it looks gray. It's actually transparent. And it is definitely resolution limited, not like an SVG or a PDF with an SVG in it, or an Illustrator file. And by transparent, I mean you can put it on any background. Let's go import it into Adobe Illustrator. Notice this checkerboard, which means transparent. You can put in a new background, just like that. Then from here, you can keep it as an SVG or save it as a JPEG, whatever you want. So hopefully that's helpful for knowing what to do with these SVG files so that you'll be able to include the highest quality you can have in your presentations or in your papers.